The reading had been set up by a magazine called, if I remember right, Scottish International, which was a kind of political review type magazine, leftist in tone, I suppose, slightly. And they had set up a conference in Edinburgh called What Kind of Scotland? And when we got together, you know, jumping ahead to the actual starting rehearsals or working on the writing of the Cheviot, John said, oh, by the way, 2 weeks in, we're doing this reading at this conference. And it'll be lovely just to get the tone of it. So we said, okay, you know, all we had was a title. We didn't have a play, we had nothing. And we sort of went, well, we'll see if that actually happens. And of course it did happen. And we walked on the stage, we had chairs, and very full house in the George Square Theatre. And John was still writing, John McGrath still up the back, handing bits of paper down, you know, try that. And we read it, and the roof came off the place. Because, see, essentially you've got to remember that by and large these subjects were not dealt with theatrically for a long time, if at all they hadn't. It's not that we were the first company to be doing Scottish history with a slant on it, far from it, but it had a vibrancy at the time because of the oil, the bubbling up literally of the oil in the North Sea, and the sense that the politics and economics of Scotland were in flux. So anything that related that economic flux back to its history was solid gold and brand new. So the huge success, I mean, storming ovations, and then followed by, I can remember a sort of hefty party back at the Edinburgh Chaplaincy Centre with Richard Holloway sort of hosting us, or the young Richard Holloway, in fact we were all young. And at that, when we finished that night, and we knew that we had 2 or 3 more weeks before we would actually take the show on the road, we all said almost with one voice, we have to keep the spirit of that reading. If we polish this up to make it look like it's a theatrical show, beautifully presented, we have to find a format or a style that makes that reading work, the same sense of immediacy as it had been. And to maintain that, to do it every night in all these village halls and Highland venues that we were playing in. So essentially we spent the next 2 or 3 weeks honing it to make it average. You know, we honed it to make it look rough. But that takes a little bit of doing, you know, to make it look like it's absolutely spontaneous. And that was really what that process was, as well as then continuing to write. I mean, we added stuff right up to the opening. We added stuff during the first Highland and second Highland tours.